I think people fundamentally misunderstand the job of an owner or CEO of a business, right? They think it is to sit in an office, look at data dashboards, and get onto their team about churn or about gross margin percentages or growth rates, all these things. But in my view, our job as business leaders and as strategic visionary CEOs, entrepreneurs, is we have to be in the business, right? To work on the business, I need to understand what's going on in the business. And the only way for me to do that is to talk to our teams and talk to our customers.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Flywheel Effect, where we're sponsored by Vital. Vital has been around for quite a while, helping integrators optimize your businesses using metrics and data to allow them to work more on their business than in their business. Now, if you're an integrator, if you're working in homes, in residential or commercial, contact Matt and Vital and learn how your business can operate better and work to make sure that you can get the most out of your business that you want. We have a guest today. We have Kade Thomas. He is actually two interesting roles. He is the CEO of Cerv Property Solutions, which seems like they've accumulated a number of home and commercial services under one roof to help you solve a bunch of problems, dumpsters, landscape, a bunch of others. He's also the founder and managing partner of Emery Oak Partners, a private equity firm. And Kade, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Brent and Matt. Excited to be here.
Hey, you're welcome. Yeah, so you've got an interesting story. We had here, because you've been involved in home services for quite a while. You're like 30 years old now, give or take, I think, right?
You might be the youngest guest, Kade. There should be an award for that.
Are you 30 yet, Kade?
I am. Yes, I'm 31.
31.
Nice.
Okay, so now you're one of us old guys.
Love
so that's
it.
good.
I know. Once you eclipse the 30-year mark, you're just, everybody's old at that point.
I remember being a young guy, like I was one of the youngest managers in the country at Circuit City, and I felt way out of sorts back then. I was always hanging out with much older guys, and I felt some insecurity around it until people like just own it. Good on you, man, for how much success you've had so far.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate that for sure.
You started out your first business in your teens, and that was a landscape business?
It was lawn care and landscape business.
Started out with a lawnmower and pushing around the neighborhood. Is that what this is, or something more?
It was funny. As a young kid, I literally had this fake lawn equipment from Toys R Us, and there's all these pictures of me going around to my neighbors, and I would fake mow their lawns for $1. And so I don't know where the just desire to be out there and doing something. Parents are both active, and so really just loved it from day one. And then when I was old enough to actually mow lawns for real, I was super excited. I had done a ton of research on the business and didn't think of it just as a summer job, but I was actually trying to make it something, and it ended up being something. Started when I was 13 and sold it when I came down to University of Texas here in Austin.
That's great. So there are, you think, start a business at 13. But the flip side of this is really, there are a lot of kids who mowed lawns at 13. That's not out of sorts at all, right?
For sure.
What the difference is that you turned into something that's not just mowing lawns at 13. And that's the rare piece. How'd you cross that mental bridge from, hey, I'm going to make a few bucks mowing lawns to this is going to be a business that one day may turn into something that's saleable? Then, which means you had people working for you because it wasn't just you, which means you had a number of routes and regular customers. It wasn't just random Saturdays. There's a leap there that's different.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's at the time I didn't really understand what some of the core metrics were, but looking back, that first business was really my first lesson in customer churn, route density, revenue per man, right? All of these different things that are core metrics to look at any home and commercial services business today. I did not, again, realize it at the time, but I was getting my first lesson in that. And so everything from teaching myself Excel at 13, 14 years old to build pricing models to understand essentially how to end up with more money in my bank account at the end of the month that I started with, which is really all I viewed it at age 13, to QuickBooks, to invoicing on time, to DSO, right? All these core business principles. It was pretty incredible of having to take that leap, right? You get to a point where I can't mow all these lawns, so I have to hire someone.
How old were your first employee?
I was 14 when I hired my first employee.
Was it one of your friends from high school, or was it actually somebody else?
So I started that way. I had a couple friends from high school at 14, and I realized that they were not stellar employees. So then I quickly moved at age 15 to hiring real industry employees and hired my first crew from another landscape business in town when I was 15. And then we ended up with a ton of employees by the end, which was super exciting.
Now, were these real employees? These just like, I'm paying cash.
No, these are real 40-year-old W-2 guys that have been in landscaping for 20 years that wanted to, for some reason, come work for a hardworking entrepreneurial 15-year-old.
So let me just back up a minute. Brent, you mentioned kids mowing lawns at 13 is not that unusual. I want to challenge that. Kade, where did you grow up? What town was this in?
I grew up halfway between Dallas and Fort Worth. It was a small town called Colleyville, Texas.
Got it. Okay, I'm familiar. I think we actually have a member in there. So you're in Colleyville, and that is probably very different than some of the metro areas that we live in, but I couldn't tell you the last time I saw a teenager doing any outdoor chores, housework,
Really?
for money or not.
I had two kids walk up, knock on my door this winter to shovel my walk. Like, same thing.
Maybe it's just where we live. I have no idea. I've lived in a hilly area for a lot of time, but so I just want to point out, like, that alone, just the desire to be a 13-year-old who's spending his summer making money versus, screwing around with other kids or chasing girls or whatever, and maybe you did all of it, but that's unique, which is cool. And then 2 years later, having a legitimate business, I think there's something unique there. And I don't want to, obviously, Kade, you're very successful in where you are and have come a long way in the, whatever that is, 16, 17 years. That's amazing. I don't want that too much I think it'd be easy for our listeners to say, oh, there's this unicorn, right? This unicorn kid. And I don't want them to focus on that, right? Obviously, give credit where credit's due. That's incredible. But I think what's really fun is focusing just on those lessons, as Brent was bringing up. Like, hey, that's really interesting to have a 40-year-old working for a 15-year-old. But at the end of the day, there were business lessons you were learning at 15 that some of us learned at 25 or 30 or
Matt, there are many clients or prospective clients that did not learn the lessons that Kade taught himself at age 15 when we speak to them now at age 40. Like, that's
right.
Happens every day.
And so it'd be really interesting, what's the mindset shift there? And Brent, I think you were going, I'll hand it back to you. I think you were going there. It's like, where did you see this? What was your model? That kind of thing. Because we're not trying to replicate you as a human. That's impossible. But what we're trying to do is help our audience to see, hey, what are some of the things that Kade was thinking about that we could adopt?
What? Go ahead, Kade.
I think there's so many exciting things. And of course, when I'm in the moment, 13, 14, 15 years old, I was not thinking about them in the same sort of frame of reference as I do today. But when I look back, it really was the foundation of exactly how we think about our businesses today, right? So I've evolved in the home and commercial services space over the last 17, 18 years. I've built and sold some other businesses in the space. But that frame of reference and that foundation really is exactly the way we think about it today, just in a much more sophisticated way, right? So we think about the flywheel of what information or data would be helpful to us to understand to better go get new customers, to serve those customers, to attract talent, what pay systems work to pay that talent. How do we think about ourselves as true professionals versus just this blue collar service business that is a pain for customers to deal with? And all of those things, I look back now and think about, the name of the first business was Lawn Pros, and I think about at Lawn Pros, what were we doing and how was I thinking about that at 13, 14, 15, 16 years old? What is actually rewarding is to be able to look back and say, I knew at the time it was so much better for me to have a client that paid me $500 a month to mow their lawn versus the client that paid me $500 one time to redo their flower beds. I didn't, again, at the time necessarily understand why that was, but now thinking about that in terms of trying to drive recurring revenue, trying to be the company that's always there for our customers and is creating an experience versus just being a vendor or the lawn guy, right? How do we create an experience that then identifies them with our brand and attracts them to buy more services from us so we can create that and duplicate that experience? So it's really, it is fun now to look back and think about all of those times and take inventory of all the things and feelings I was having at that time. Again, not knowing exactly why those things were exciting or interesting, but now I do, and that's rewarding for sure.
And I think, so the question I had was, What about your family? So were either one of your parents entrepreneurs? Did you see this drive and spirit and firsthand, or was it just you?
Yeah, so my dad was an Air Force pilot and then a commercial airline pilot.
Okay.
So he was very process oriented, very regimented, very values driven. And him and I talk about how that really shows up in our business today. And my mom was originally a marriage counselor, and then she did have a couple entrepreneurial spouts where she started a cooking school and some different things, and I would help her there. And just seeing that drive and trying to build something, I think did for sure excite me. You go back to the old adage of the Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger philosophy, right? Of people first, surround those people with great process, and you'll end up with a great product or service and ultimately profit. And I think my mom really embodied the people function. My dad really embodied the process function. And I've been able to really take those two things and marry them together.
Would your dad fly in the Air Force or Navy, did you say, probably?
He was in the Air Force. He flew C-130s, was deployed in Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and then came back and joined American Airlines and flew commercially for 35 years, I believe.
From America, C-130s, one of the big transport jets, right?
Big cargo. Yeah, my grandfather flew C-130s. My dad flew C-130s.
Really? How did you not fall down that hole?
Started a lawn business at 13, so there was no time to go to the military.
It's like, the government can't pay me enough to leave these lawns behind. You know what trips me out about those C-130s is when you see them, they look like they're going to fall out of the sky. They look like they're just moving so slow that it's impossible for them to fly. I live pretty close to an Air Force Reserve base here in California, and they fly in and out of there all the time.
So I have a bunch of friends who entered the military when they were young. One of them was a pilot and left recently. And I look at them and I'm like, wow, you put in your time, but you're not making a ton of money while you're there. But you come out and you have this incredible foundation with your pension and healthcare and everything that it actually sets you up. Your dad went to pilot, which is a great thing, but it also sets you up for those that are inclined to have this risk-free entrepreneurial option because you have this foundation that doesn't go away. Like actually, literally, if you didn't want to, you wouldn't have to work and you could live decently. That's there forever. But now, if you have the gumption and obviously you have you can have motivation and discipline, it can be incredibly successful. I like to have a bunch of friends who have done that, and it's an underrated path. I don't want to come out when I'm 45 and it'd be like, okay, wasting my life. But really what you are is you're primed to have that 40-year run after age 45. So I think it's an underrated path.
Yeah, definitely.
Totally agree.
So anyway.
And the reserves.
All right, so let's now, sold your business when you went to college. You went to UT, Texas, which when I saw, it's actually interesting. Like you had that successful business, but you chose to then put your entrepreneurial career on hold, even though you saw how successful it was, to go get your degree. And then it looks like you didn't actually jump in right away. You did some kind of, I'll just call it, lack of a better term, high finance stuff right out of college. What were you thinking through that period?
It was interesting, right? I was super excited about everything that we had built in the lawn business and go through the sale process, but I think what I learned in the process of Lawn Pros was that there were so many institutional foundational elements, whether it be data and the analytics associated with that, whether it be these core foundational finance principles, whether it be marketing, right? It was almost, I think most people have this entrepreneurial journey and they say, I can just go do this on my own. I don't need school now. I had the opposite mentality where I said, there were so many things that I kind of brute forced to make happen. But having a robust foundation and institutional knowledge around those different functions of the business would be just absolutely incredible. So having run a business and then going to college was the most rewarding experience ever, because every single class, every single thing I was learning, I was taking back and thinking through it contextually in the eyes of the business I had just built. And while I was at UT, I was doing some institutional finance internships, for lack of a better word. There was a local guy in Austin and a couple guys that were a few years older than me at UT. And we were doing public equity investing. We were doing small cap takeovers. We were looking at some real estate investments. We were looking at some venture capital investments. We were looking at some t-shirt manufacturing for sorority and fraternity type investments. And so that was really exciting to have had the business, then come build the foundation at UT Austin, and then in real time applying that to various different sectors across finance. And then graduate, and it was actually about a month before graduation, said, Okay, that was all awesome. Got so much exposure, built such a great foundation. I want to go replicate this in exactly what I did right before college. And so a month before graduation, go out and buy this small commercial landscape business right here in Austin. And now took what I built in the first business, all of the foundational elements, scaled that up and had a meaningful exit to a public company, Brightview, in the space in 2020.
And you did that as a search fund. Was that a funded search or were you just doing self-funded search?
No, it was we had structured it as a search fund. We looked at a ton of different things. I think if you could think about anything in the service space, we thought about it. Fire sprinkler maintenance to a coffee shop to a brewery to all sorts of different things. But ultimately found this commercial landscape business that I had some requisite knowledge in, of course. And we raised a little money around it, put some of our own money in, and made that acquisition in 2017.
That's great. And that was before graduation. So like you were looking for business to buy before, which is great. I get this. I love it. And it's there's two things here. Like one, there's so much noise on Twitter about how college isn't worth it. Like it's constant. Don't bother. You can learn everything on YouTube, all this nonsense. I'm not of that ilk. Like, no, it doesn't sound like you are either. And it's good to hear someone who's actually was in the spot to not go to college if they wanted to, making the decision because you'd get a more rounded view of the world that college was the right place to be.
100%. The education, absolutely incredible, and built such solid foundations, but college allows you to, those are your formidable years, right? Who are you going to be? What kind of leader are you going to be if you are going to go be an entrepreneur, right? Are you a dictatorial type leader? Are you a servant leader? There's all these different things, and you learn through experiences the type of people that you want to surround yourself with, the type of person you want to be, your value system. There's so many intangibles that were incredible at UT.
And the cool thing is, I think, and I had the same kind of experience, is just because you're in college doesn't mean you don't have to go after entrepreneurial experiences, right? Like Absolutely. You can do it while you're there. Sounds like you ended up looking for a business to buy. You did some other stuff. I founded a newspaper in college and ran that for 2 years. And they're like full-time jobs, and you just figure it out because who needs to sleep when you're 19, right?
I worked 60 hours a week in college.
Yeah.
I blocked all my classes to Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8 to 2. And then I worked 60 hours a week. So it was really incredible.
It's incredible.
It's funny that the timing of this conversation, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a friend who recommended that I rewatch Rodney Dangerfield Back to School.
Oh, yeah.
That?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so here I am thinking about Kade being Rodney Dangerfield as he's going through college. I've been here. I've done all of this. I know all of this stuff, right? But of course, you took a different approach. You made the most of it. But yeah, what a great movie. And it's funny the timing of this conversation since I just watched that movie. Teaching the professors how to run a business.
That is one of my family's most quoted movies. You know how there are certain movies that we quote regularly in the course of our days or years, and that is one of them.
So then, Brent, what's another good quote from that movie that your family quotes off?
Look out for number one, but don't step at number two. That's one of my. We use it. I don't know if you've seen the size of the check, which is what my dad uses all the time. And that's when he made a donation to the school to get admitted and had built a building.
Oh, that's amazing. I appreciate you guys letting me take that little off-ramp there. But
off-ramp is what makes us useful, Matt.
So tell us about what has been happening since that exit in 2020. And by the way, was that pre-COVID exit?
We had started negotiating it late 2019 before COVID, and then ultimately closed in October of 2020, right in the thick of it, which was, quite a time.
Did they try to go back to the negotiating table with you?
I think those processes, especially when you're dealing with a big public company, there's always things that happen at the last minute, but ultimately we got it across the finish line, and it was a good deal for us.
Good for you. Yeah, I could see that going either direction with the way COVID affected commercial.
I think it was still early on in COVID, and I think one of the driving forces was that all of the services, and we were a landscape business, but all the kind of service categories got deemed essential services. And so that was super exciting. There were so many businesses were just shut down or put completely on pause, and we were out there every day serving customers. And so I think that gave some tailwind to the transaction.
Nice. But now let's switch this to where you are right now. And you then subsequently founded Cerv. Now, you've built this with a number of services. You got pool, landscape, outdoor cleaning, dumpster business, which I happen to love. And if you did this, did you start all of these or were these acquisitions?
Yeah, we started all the businesses. So at various times, first one was started in 2021, and we've started them all at various times over the last 5 years.
Okay. So these are all ground up. That's cool. But it looks like you did them ground up then as separate businesses. As opposed to doing one or all one umbrella.
Yeah, so I'll give you the core thesis and everything I had learned at the time 5 years ago. I was 26, had been doing services for 13 years. And everything that I had seen from whether it was the big public strategics, the private equity backed roll-ups, the sort of local mom and pop, I think there was this reverse equation, right, that I thought was the broken piece of these industries. The first thing was it was all about the technician and the expertise, and whatever could fit the technician's schedule and the company's schedule, that's what the customer was forced to live with, right? And number two was this idea of professionalization or brand was just really put on the back burner, right? It was all about, we're a vendor, let's compete on price. Maybe we have some economies of scale because we're a regional or national player, but every pool truck was white with a blue wave on it. Every landscape truck was white with a green tree on it, right? It was the way it was. And so the approach was, after we sold WLE in 2020, our commercial landscape business, went back to some of the customers and said, hey, I have a non-compete in landscape, not going to do landscaping for the next 5 years just because that was a term. And so what could I create? What could I be building that would make your life easier? If we put you at the center of everything, if our nucleus was the customer and not ourselves, what would that look like? Because white glove service is something that I think I've been successful in throughout the life of the home and commercial services space. And we heard some recurring themes, right? If you can reduce my vendor load, which means the sheer number of vendors I have to interact with, if you can make the experience one that feels good and professional and actually understands the core of what I need to do as a property manager or a homeowner. And three, if you can deliver me actually value add data, whether that's reports, whether that's when my upcoming services are, anything that actually brings value and not me having to call you asking these sort of rudimentary type questions. And so the way that we formed this thesis was basically in a war room in my condo building in COVID, right? We said, all right, if we want to create this sort of unified home and commercial services brand, we want to put the customer at the center. We want to be data driven. We want to have technology at the forefront. We want to deliver this white glove experience both to our team members and our customers. What does that look like? And the first challenge we had was we've got to be able to create expertise in each of these different verticals. We don't want to just be a landscaper that happens to do pest control or happens to do janitorial services, but we've got to create real expertise. And so what we did was we said, all right, for us to do that, we need to go build businesses in each of these sectors, right? So we built a pest business, we built a janitorial business, we built a pool business, and so on and so forth. And then over the course of the first 4 years, as we had stood those up, we got some regional routes built around the southeastern US. We said, okay, now landscape non-compete's about to roll off. We know we've got expertise in that vertical. Let's realize the core thesis here and let's unify everything under Cerv. And so rolled out Cerv sort of October of 2025 when landscape non-compete rolled off. And we made this sort of a complete brand-centric, customer-centric, white glove approach. And so that's what we've been building toward. And we're about 7 months into the actual realization of the core thesis. And I could go on for hours about all the exciting things and philosophy behind that, but it's been really exciting.
My takeaways from this is when you're going after these businesses where you go after them aggressively, and I heard this before too, with whether it was purchasing your business previously, it was when you started up, even in landscaping, is you're very thoughtful about what actions you're going to take and what's going to deliver value. Because I think that's where a lot of people miss is how thoughtful they are about what's the value being provided. And I've made that mistake myself plenty of times.
Yeah, there's many layers to that. But I think if you pull that back, we go back to that sort of core principle of people plus process equals a great product or service. And if you start with the people, right, it's how are we delivering value internally to our team so that they can in turn go deliver incredible value to our customers. And is important to us is you think about a typical roll-up strategy, right, where massively fragmented spaces, a roll-up might have 10 different brands with 10 different teams. They're trying to patch these things together and play multiple arbitrage for a quick exit, right? What we can confidently tell our teams, we're building this for the long term. And we want to unify everybody. I don't care if you're in the pool vertical or the pest vertical or the landscape vertical. Everybody's wearing Cerv on their chest. Yes, it might be delineated by a different color, little subtext that says pool, landscape, pest, etc. But we want you to identify with Cerv, and we want to be a one team unified brand. And when we can, from the way we pay our teams to the culture that we create at Cerv, they feel part of something. It feels long term. It feels like a career, right? We're not arguing with them over 25 cents and they're just a random employee number on a page. We invest in our teams. And when we do that, which generates real value in their lives and for their families, they're incentivized to go create value for our customers. And then when we understand what that value for our customers is, we've built the whole org around that, right? So you think about one quick example, you think about the value to the customer is, can you do all these verticals extremely well? And do I only have to talk to one person? So building the operational teams in a way where they retain that kind of core expertise in the vertical, but you have an account manager or an account executive that's unified and can speak to all of those verticals for the customer as a single point of contact. That's huge, right? That is, the whole org structure revolves around that sort of output and value driver for the customer.
I love that, Kate. Thank you for laying that out. One thing I'd love to dive a little deeper on is your experience in listening to the customer and turning that into a business plan. I think it's something that we should spend some time on because our listener could really benefit from that. So a few very direct questions I have around that are, it sounds like you had the space and time to create this thesis, right? Many of our listeners are in the business, right? They're actively in the business. They don't have the ability to hit the pause button and go and do this research project. And so for our listener who's in the thick of it, who would love to listen to their customer and maybe come up with a thesis or a business plan and shift their business, what might you suggest to them when they don't have the ability to hit the pause button?
Yeah, and I think it on the surface might seem that we just had this perfect plan and everything's gone according to plan, and now we've unified under Cerv and it was always going to be exactly this. We've iterated on this. It's building the plane while you're flying it. And we've iterated on this thousands of times, literally, at this point. And I think the most important thing, because it really doesn't take that long, is creating the time and space for yourself to go actually interact with your customers. And that could, and your team members for that matter, right? And that could be in the normal course of business, right? If I'm serving a customer today, I'm just doing a health check, but maybe I ask 2 or 3 kind of prodding questions to be able to understand what are the same pain points. And if I go repeat that 50 times to my top 50 customers and start to pull out themes, they don't have to be these major thesis driving massive business shifts. But if we start to see some recurring themes, it's small pivots, right? When I grew up, my dad would always tell me when we were driving a boat, don't turn the wheel to the left 100 times, it's little motions, right? Just like you would fly a plane. And I think that's the same thing. If you've got a great business that's already established, you don't have to go reinvent the entire business model, but it's the slight adjustments based on those customer interactions or team member interactions that really can be the massive value creators for you.
I love that. I love the way you spelled that out, because I think all too often, many small businesses are looking for that one big thing that's going to change their business. And the fact is, spending all of the time trying to get this perfect whatever it is before you implement it is not the best way. You just said you iterated 1,000 times in the last 5 years, may or may not be exaggerating. Even if you aren't, even if it's a fifth of that, your iterations are happening because it sounds like you have the confidence to put something out there that's not perfect and learn from that experience. And so how can our audience borrow that confidence from you? Because I think my experience from our audience is that they really want it to be perfect before they're going to put it out there. What can they learn from you around that?
Yeah, I think when you think about the one value unlock, I think I would equate that to maybe the Silicon Valley founder, right? That's trying to think of the next Uber, or the next Airbnb or something like that. And the reality of our world is you could count the number of unicorn founders there are, right? It's really just not that great of a number of people in the world. The world is driven by people running businesses like ours or buying real estate or doing these things that make the world go round. And I would backtrack into the concept of our unified brand, right? That was one thing where we believed we can create this real trust flywheel with our customers. If we can do one thing well for them, that creates this trust flywheel where I can then go and say, if you trust us with your landscaping, the friction of our ability to cross-sell other services to them is essentially zero. And so we now, as a business, for putting on the investor hat, we've been able to capture more wallet share from that single customer simply by creating sense of trust and white glove service with them. And again, that's not some groundbreaking thing that we had to do. It was just simply build trust with your customers, do what you say you're going to do. These are simple foundational principles that any business can execute on. It's figuring out what those are in someone's specific business to be able to grow. And again, if I was a landscaping business and you were paying us $100,000 a year to do your landscape, but now I create that same trust I did 5 years ago and add on janitorial, pool, pest, etc., I've now captured $175,000, almost 2x, and that was a huge value unlock. We're not doing something that is just so out of this world. It's build the trust with the customer, deliver real value, but be able to offer them more things, and now we have more of the wallet share.
I think went deeper of how you make these decisions, but I think you said something in the beginning of this little part here that people need to understand. You talk to your customers. There are so many business owners that avoid speaking to their customers. I know, Matt, we encounter them. Like, when's the last time you spoke to your customers? I know, I don't talk to them all the time.
I stay far away from them because they're going to complain about things.
I think people fundamentally misunderstand the job of an owner or CEO of a business, right? They think it is to sit in an office, look at data dashboards, and get onto their team about churn or about penetration percentages or gross margin percentages or growth rates, all these things. But in my view, our job as business leaders and as strategic visionary CEOs, entrepreneurs, is we have to be I don't view it in the business, right? To work on the business, I need to understand what's going on in the business. And the only way for me to do that is to talk to our teams and talk to our customers. Then I can take a step back and say, let me contextualize all the data that I'm seeing based on those conversations and interactions. And then I can understand the drivers and strategic vision setting and all those different things.
But you're also going to understand when you speak to those customers, you're not just looking looking to those customers to give you affirmation that you've done a good job. You want the ways that you can improve. You want that feedback. You want everything. That's what I'm hearing. I think a lot of people who are like customers, anytime they hear a negative comment, they're going to say that guy's crazy or they don't want to hear it. I think that's a different piece of this too.
100%. I would say most entrepreneurs just by nature are self-starters and a bit egotistical, right? And I think the reality is if we can take a second to be humble and understand that these customers are doing business with us because they like us. If they have complaints, all those should mean to us is they're trying to help us get better as a business so that we can continue to be even better partners to them. It's not we need to fight them and argue with them and all these different things. They wouldn't be our customer if they didn't enjoy doing business with us. This is constructive criticism to be an even better partner, which allows us to grow, which allows us to retain them long term. It's all about perspective setting, I think, in a lot of ways.
Matt, how does that differ from the conversations you have with a lot of the integrators out there?
I think integrators, by and large, are, from what we've seen, very interested in keeping their customers happy. And so they listen to their customers. The piece of this puzzle that they struggle with is building the business model that puts the customer first, that is a financially viable one. Mm-hmm. So they have a customer first business model, most of them, but they do it at the sacrifice of everything else. The sacrifice of their personal freedoms, the sacrifice of their money and financial freedom. When we think about the three things that we work with business owners on, it's creating money freedom, time freedom, and freedom of impact. The impact piece, most of them do a great job with. They wake up every day and they want to impact. They build these incredible things. Of course, many times it's self-serving because they're seeking the affirmation that they get from the award or the publication or whatever. But yeah, that's the beauty of reading the subtext hear of what Kade is saying. Kade is like, hey, I'm going to go listen, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to go listen to my customers. I'm going to go listen to my team. I'm going to do what's necessary to serve those folks. All of that costs money, a lot of money and time. This isn't free.
No.
But you stand there and say, I'm going to build the business that I know when I serve both of those people really well, I'm not going to be the cheapest. I'm going to guess, Kade, you're not the cheapest, right? Probably in any of your markets, in any of your verticals, you're probably not the cheapest. I'm sure you're competitive, but you're probably not the cheapest. That's the piece that I think many service providers are missing, is you have to have a commercially viable business and able to properly serve your customers and your team.
Yeah, could not agree with you more. And I think structurally and foundationally, to actually offer what Cerv is offering to a customer, if we were just doing this across one vertical, we would be 3 times the price of anybody else. It's just impossible. And so part of the core thesis was, how do we, instead of having distinct businesses in every vertical and just trying to do this as a whole, how do we create a commercially viable product around this? And it was, we need to have multiple verticals that are unified, because I can spread my back office costs across multiple verticals so that I don't have to charge 3 times. We're right in the middle when it comes to price. We're not the most expensive and we're not the cheapest. But if you look at the classic 4 quadrants of value and cost, right, you would find us drastically up and to the right on value and middle of the pack on cost. And I think what that signals is, we did listen to our customers. We knew how to create value, but we structurally also had to design a business model around being able to do that in a commercially viable way, to your point.
Love it. Love it.
That's great. So, Kate, how do you run both Cerv and Emery Oak at the same time?
Yeah, Emery Oak is really our investment vehicle. And we're not technically, I would say, a private equity firm by the traditional sense, or traditional meaning of the word. Cerv is our primary holding. We're a small, lean team at Emery Oak. We operate a small real estate fund as well, which is, to me, directly correlated, right? When we understand the impacts of real estate, right? But whether it's hold periods, whether it's NOI maximization in the short term, if that's a short hold period, or CapEx planning if it's a long hold period, that really helps us contextualize the customers we're serving as part of Cerv. And so I view them as very interrelated. And those are the primary 2 things. We probably, at Emery Oak, we spend 80 to 85% of our time on Cerv. At this point, we're in the disposition phase of our real estate fund, and we make a couple of other sort of interesting investments. But I would say, again, very interrelated asset classes that we're looking at Emery Oak, and Cerv is our primary holding.
Got it. Great. So Emery Oak, okay, that's good. And so do you have outside investors at Emery Oak, or it's just all you and your partners own capital?
Yeah, so Emery Oak as a parent is my capital, and then the funds themselves, so like our real estate fund, we take outside investors for that.
Okay. So I think I'm getting close to this hour on this episode, but there's been a lot of things here that for our listeners to take away that they can almost directly apply to their businesses, right? It's about thinking about customers. It's about understanding your data, understanding how to separate yourself emotionally from your business and making decisions around what are the growth metrics, profitability you want. Is there any one thing, or is it just being this process oriented where you're able to do it, and I would say in a straightforward but diligent manner? What has been that key to your success that you think is the most important thing for our listeners to take away? And maybe it's not one thing, but I'm guessing that there's a few things that stand out to you.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head on a lot of them, right? You got to listen to your team. You got to listen to your customers. You have to be willing to dive into the data and understand not just what the data is telling you from a numerical perspective, but what are the value drivers and root cause analysis that need to be performed to understand that data operationally. I think the other thing, back to the first concept, people plus process, that'll lead to a great product or service and then profit. Don't get that equation in the wrong order. I think the other thing that I have talked to several founders about is you have to be realistic and honest with yourself about what you are building for. And is that, hey, I like this business, I want to work hard for 3 years and then I want to try to sell it? That is a very different business model and steps that need to be taken than what we're doing at Cerv, which is, hey, we're looking to build this for the long term and we're not looking to build this for a short-term exit, you make very different decisions, right? The things that you choose to invest in, the technology decisions that you make, the level of integration you choose to take between companies that you acquire. There's all sorts of decisions. And if you're not honest with yourself about really what you're building for, you're going to make a lot of mistakes that are going to directly impact whatever that end game is for you. So I think it's being honest about the goal of the business and the time horizon related to that. It's understand and be willing to dive into the data. And then it's people, process, product, and listen to your customers and teams. Those would be the key takeaways.
I think that echoes pretty much a lot of the similar lessons that you give to our members.
Yeah, and one observation I've made thus far, Kade, which I think is worth highlighting, is you have started with a vision. It sounds like maybe other than your 13-year-old self, since then you've started with a vision. And it sounds like you're not getting that caught up in the how. You're creating the what or the result that you want, the thesis, and then figuring out the how along the way. Does that accurately describe your process?
Yeah, I think how you start off with an idea, but you're willing to iterate on that constantly. Creating the culture in the organization, that's okay. That, hey, we're going to make a lot of changes and we're going to pivot on the fly based on what we're learning. That is back to the people and making sure that they're aligned to that, right? Some people just want a perfect little box. They want an exact process and then they want to stick to that, right? You have to, from onboarding a new team member throughout the course of their tenure, you got to make sure that they're aligned to the ever-changing how based on the feedback you're hearing. I think that's another very important component of it.
Yeah, I love that. I agree. So we refer to that as top-down building versus bottom-up building. And so yours top-down is vision, thesis, plan, but recognizing that a lot is going to change as we implement this. Many of the folks that we interact with get stuck in the bottom, right? They try to start with the how and they're like, oh, that's just not possible. Of course, it's not possible with today's information. It's not possible with today's skill set. It may not even be possible with today's humans in your business. They often get stuck in there. So just wanted to highlight for the audience, that's the difference, right? If you're feeling stuck, it's maybe because you're building from the bottom up. You don't have the vision top down, recognizing that if your vision is big enough, chances are a lot has to change in your business. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Including some of the people who are with you. Kade, I love how you brought up the organization, the organisms inside of the organization have to be prepared for that type of change. And there are just a lot of humans that are, and there's many humans that aren't. They need the process. So you're going to grow out of some of those people too as your business starts to settle in. Some of those hard-charging, chaos-addicted folks that were great in the startup phase maybe don't work for you as things stabilize. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the concept of a tour of duty, right? Going back to my dad's military days, and many thought leaders have utilized the same phrase, is the people that take you from 0 to 20 million in revenue, or maybe even 0 to 5, are not the same people that can take you from 5 to 20 and then 20 to 50 and 50 to 100. It's not that they're bad, they're great. It's just their skill set is meant to be the grassroots brute force type skill set. And then as you start to get to move from the scale to the stabilization phase and start to institutionalize the business, it's could potentially a different skill set that you need. And you've got to be okay with that.
I love the way you put that. There's very few Delta Force operators out there that can do it all, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I think one other thought I would share is around that vision statement. I think people, entrepreneurs and founders, have to think bigger about what that is, right? So for us, you think about, yes, our job is to go do great landscaping services and perform great pest services and janitorial services. And that's where you can get really bogged down in the how. Is if that's your goal, if we're going to be the best landscapers, then you're going to spend so much time on exactly the process for mowing a yard or treating it or whatever. And you as a founder you need to be obsessed with execution, but not in those weeds. But what are we really trying to do? We're really trying to build trust and exude a feeling in our customers. And when that's the goal, then you're thinking big, right? How do we design white glove account management teams? How do we get our crews and service experts in the field to talk to our customers in a different kind of way? And you're just having those a lot more rewarding conversations when you think about the vision in a different way than maybe it's been thought about before.
Love it.
Great.
I have one question for you, Kade. You're out here doing these podcasts. What's your economic outcome? What's the reason you're sharing what you're sharing? I'm sure you're just a great guy who's willing to share all this information, but what are you looking for?
Yeah, I think becoming a thought leader in the space is only rewarding. I think there's not necessarily a stated goal of it, but showcasing who we are, who I am as a leader, and being able to help those around, I think just has a natural flywheel effect, whether that's attracting talent, whether that's customers happening to hear it and say, wow, that's a company I'd want to do business with, or just, again, generally people that want advice and surround myself with great people.
Love it. Cool.
Cool, Kade. Really appreciate your time here. Any last thoughts?
No, thanks, Matt and Brent. It was a great conversation, and appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. It's been really great. I think it's going to be incredibly valuable for our listening base, and I think hopefully helps them become more successful.
Inspiring, I think, too, right?
For sure.
I mean,
Absolutely.
Regardless of when you did these things in your life, Kade, right? Whether you started at 13 or 23 or 26 or whatever, that's actually irrelevant. It's incredible how much you've accomplished at your age. I want to give you credit for that. But I think just the inspiration of how you think about things, I think, is a great shift for our audience. So thanks for bringing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. Thank you, guys.
How can people get a hold of you or stay in touch with you?
I'm very active on LinkedIn, so people can definitely reach out on LinkedIn, and happy to share email and phone number, anything from there.
Well, cool. Well, again, this has been another episode of The Flywheel Effect. If you've enjoyed this episode, please give us a like, a follow, a review, or one of those 5 stars. Hit those 5-star button. It's always helpful. And if you know someone who would find this useful, please share with them and have them enjoy as well. So again, this is Brent Sonnek-Schmelz, Matt Bernath, along with our guest, Kade Thomas. And thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to The Flywheel Effect. Our journey through the intricate world of luxury home services continues to be fueled by your passion for excellence and innovation. If you found value in our conversations today, don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. More insights and resources. Visit us online at growwithvital.com. Until next time.